So the big question is this: how do investors like us who don't have a PhD in finance or millions to start investing, how do we grow our bank accounts to build real savings in retirements and yet still have the time to do what we really love? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answer.
Hey guys, this is John. Welcome to the Stock Marketers Podcast. Hope you're having an awesome morning. I wanted to give you just a quick little tidbit today that I kind of got thinking a little bit about economics and a little bit more about batteries. Most people that I know, when we were kind of growing up and, they were a lot of these older, I think it was like nickel iron batteries or something. It was before lithium ion. It was kind of the older version of batteries that used to be in some of the earlier iPhones, some of the earlier iPods, and just some of the like electronics from like the 2000s. And I guess I don't know how long they went into 2000 and like the 2010s. But if basically, right, the kinds of batteries where you could charge them up and then if you say depleted the whole thing, it would be like really bad for the battery. And more specifically, this is what it usually was. You would get like your new phone, and then if you charged the battery to like 80% and fully used it, then when you tried to charge it in the future, like it would only charge to 80% or like weird stuff like that. I remember growing up, I could noticeably tell that happening to like my electronics. I would charge it, and then what would also happen was even worse, but I'll get that in just a sec. But I remember I would charge it like halfway and then kill the whole thing. And then when I tried to charge it back up again, it like wouldn't go all the way back to like a reasonable time frame. Like it would die after 4 hours instead of lasting all day like it should. And I also remember that if you left stuff plugged in like all night, and even with some of the newer batteries, there are overvoltage problems that are coming up with them where they won't limit the intake after starting to get charged. They just keep charging and charging and charging until they set on fire. Remember, that was a big problem a couple years ago with hoverboards and all. But I remember specifically these older batteries, if you like left them plugged in all night, it would like degrade the performance and it would make them batteries were just not as great back then. They would literally break if you didn't charge them the right way or you charged them for too long, yada, yada, yada. There were so many ways to essentially mess up your batteries. Now, thankfully, that isn't a problem anymore. Like, that's not a challenge in modern devices. They have electronic cutoffs that basically taper the charging. So if you look at the newest phones, they'll charge really fast at the beginning for half an hour, but then they'll start tapering off the rate at which they charge. And even if you look at like Tesla's or I got this backfire board, like they'll stop charging at like 90% to maintain the overall lifespan of the battery. So instead of going to like a full charge on lithium ion, it'll go to a 90% charge, which makes it so that you're not really using up the entire battery, even when you do run it to death, which isn't like great, but it's not like a huge big deal because the new batteries don't have what used to be called battery memory, right? So there used to be a memory where it would remember kind of what you charge it to and set that as the maximum, but that's not a thing anymore, which is awesome. And anyway, I'm not going to get too much into the specifics of how batteries work, but basically all the challenges that I described earlier that like used to be a challenge, and you probably have experienced some of them at some point, like that's not a problem anymore. It really isn't. Batteries today are awesome. They last, like, they're great. And really, the only thing that determines lifespan at this point is how many times it's charged up and depleted and charged up and depleted. And it's none of this stuff where you need to worry about leaving it plugged in or you need to worry about not charging it all the way up to the top. Like, that doesn't really matter anymore, which is phenomenal. However, if I get some new expensive electronic thing, like, what it used to be was that I would be worried about overcharging it or not charging it enough or leaving it plugged in too much. And that happened specifically when I got my board. Like, I was super worried about leaving it charged too long or something, just because it's really nice and I really enjoy it. And it also has like a pretty humongous battery, versus what I'm used to with a laptop or a phone or something. You have an electric skateboard, the battery's, it's really big. And so I was a little bit worried about it. And what I realized is that I was performing actions in a way that was completely contradictory to this concept of giving yourself options. And this concept comes from this economist, econ guy. And basically, what he noticed is that when he left nuts out before dinner, people would all start snacking on the nuts because they had like no self control. And when he removed the nuts from the table and all, everyone would thank him and say, "Oh my gosh, this is the best. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it," because they didn't want to fill up on nuts. And he realized that made absolutely no sense, because in an optimal world, having more options is better, right? More options is always better. You have the option between nuts or steak or whatever else, potato, whatever you have for dinner and all. Like it's theoretically and on paper always better to have more options. Same thing with investing. You have like 100 monitors and you can look at every, tons and tons and tons and tons of stocks. At the same time, like by all means, that is better, right? You have more options. And yet what's really interesting is with this econ guy, what he realized is that sometimes people intentionally remove options because they can't control themselves. And what I was doing is essentially I would like not charge my board after I used it because I was afraid of damaging the battery, which is, I think, partially due to a scarcity mindset in terms of batteries, which is stupid. But it's something that I struggled with, or I have been struggling with before I kind of realized this. And so I would like not charge it, and then when I needed it, it would like not be charged because I didn't plug it in, which was silly, right? Because I was essentially limiting my options by not just leaving it plugged in when I wasn't using it, which was, again, just removing options that it makes no sense to remove. So like I remember thinking about investments, right? I have like 6 or 7 or 20 or so stocks that I have positions in, or maybe I'm looking at trades in or something like that. And I love to always have tabs up, right? But the challenge is if you only have like one computer screen or maybe 2 computer screens or however many computer screens, sometimes it's tough to always have constant tabs and everything. So like the ideal scenario is to just have all the screens that you need so you can always have all those options at your fingertips. But a lot of people sometimes don't do that. Sometimes they just randomly check stuff, which is fine if you're making trades that don't have a very immediate time frame impact and all. But a lot of times it's really interesting, and what I've recently seen are people essentially intentionally only using one screen to trade because it makes it easier for them to focus, which is stupid, but it's also this idea of removing the option of having a bowl of nuts because you don't have self-control. And what's interesting is some people jump into trading without particularly much training or experience, and they don't have the self-control to like not make an investment if it's not like really good and really fits their criteria. And instead they could see something that's like halfway decent and just jump in it for fear of missing out, which is silly, but it happens. And that's, I think, where this concept of make it simple or only use one computer screen comes from, are people that just don't have the skill, the confidence, or at the end of the day, the self-control to look at different investments and only invest in the best ones and not the ones that are like mediocre and probably won't perform that well. And so the way to overcome this, and what I just realized with my battery on my board, is that all you have to do is make a simple mindset shift, and obviously practice trading because that'll help you with self-control and with identifying the best setups and all. But what I just realized is at least once you have the skills, right? Once you have the technical skills, which really just comes with experience, once you have the technical skills, what it comes down to is an abundance mindset. So I just got this I think I talked about it. I got like this big like 55-inch TV, and I've been putting just, oh my God, you can fit so many charts on TVs. I don't know why I didn't think to use them as monitors earlier. It's literally the greatest thing ever. They're way cheaper. If you were gonna make a TV like out of monitors, like it's at least twice as much. So really solid value there using TVs. And now I have all this amazing screen space with a complete abundance of space to look at charts, and it makes it like incredibly easier to have everything up and not have to worry about limiting my options. And that's the same thing you want to do like with the board, right? So now instead of like limiting my options, I just always leave it plugged in when I'm not using it, and it just gives me more and more and more options. And the way that I was able to do that is by just embracing sort of an abundance mentality. So what I used to be doing is thinking, oh, I don't have enough screen space to do all my charts, or oh, I can't leave the battery plugged in because it'll be bad for it, and it'll, there's only so much battery power. But at the end of the day, that's really not true. And as long as you have a halfway decent graphics card or an onboard graphics that you got a couple of display outputs, you can really have as much space as you want in terms of your investing. And obviously when you're starting out, maybe you're trading less actively, you don't necessarily need it, but it's important to always apply this mentality. Obviously, it's the abundance mentality, right? And obviously you want to apply that to everything with investing or money or whatever. But I just wanted to give you this little example here of an application of it that I'd never really thought of, and that was in terms of batteries and how you can apply that to your investing by approaching everything that you see not as fearful of a lack of resources, but instead as complete and total conviction that there is an abundance of those resources plentifully ready for you to use. I'll leave you guys off with an interesting statistic. I'm not 100% sure on the validity of it, but I think I think it's about 17 trillion right now in investments that have negative yield rates. So like negative yield Japanese bonds, negative yield foreign investments that are fixed income. Like $17 trillion, and I got to fact check that, but I'm pretty confident in the source. $17 trillion in investments that have negative returns because people go out and they say, you know what, the best we can do is a negative return. Like, it's incredibly stupid. I see people bidding on these tax lien auctions, and they'll bid 0%. And in most states, you can't go down to 0%. But it's insane. It's like, why? And a lot of times, it's the hedge against local currencies being terrible and having an appreciating currency, or an inflationary currency. But it's like, wow, that is, I would think the definition of scarcity is having negative returns. And so you really want to pivot completely away from that. And instead enter this investing world of abundance where it's like, oh, wow, you can have these, I recently spoke with a mentor, has a 98% win rate. All he does is sell options, like with day trading, weekly swing trading. That's all he does is sell naked options. And when you're selling options, obviously, you're going to have really high win rates just because if you do it smart and you just do it on stuff that isn't going to be incredibly volatile, like bigger companies, which is what they do, just a little bit, decent chunk out of the money. Like I said, 98% win rate. If you, just realize that instead of thinking, oh gosh, there's no way I could win from this or whatever, instead just think how could I make this just an incredibly simple way to extract an abundance of money from the market? There's an abundance of people buying very silly or paying very silly amounts of money for very silly contracts. And, how can I extract from that abundance? Because there is just so incredibly much of it. So kind of a cool example of the application of that. So anyway, yeah, it's really interesting. So some food for thought. So thank you so much. Hope you have an amazing day. If you got a ton of value from today's episode, go out there, apply it, absolutely crush it, and I will see you later. Bye.
Want more stock market secrets? If so, go get your free copy of my best-selling book, 9 to Noon. You can get your free copy plus $11,176 of unannounced bonuses it took me years to uncover completely for free at 9tonoonsecrets.com. Inside 9 to Noon, you'll find the top 38 secrets you can use to double your portfolio every 2 years and make upwards of 10% per trade daily.